بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Praise be to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, the Lord of all the worlds. And as we come to a close on this blessed month of Ramadan, we want to have, as we covered, our intended goal of reviewing our books in the 25 book challenge. You know, we should be grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we were successful and reading in all of these books, because every success is a means to increasing your himmah, increasing your aspirations. And by going over those 25 books, we can set our course for the year, right? We have something to do. We know that there is a lot of information that we must cover, right? Because every day we learn something new from a different book, from a different scholar, with a different explanation. And I remind you that all of these were, introductions to these texts. And it's like a preview of the movie. You like the preview, but you must see the entire movie, right? So we read portions of the book, but it's our duty, what? To read the entire book. And when we say reading a book, as our teachers told us, whoever has not read a book at least 3 times, they have never read the book at all. Whoever has not read a book at least 3 times has never read the book at all. So we had our introduction, and now it is upon us to cover these books. And it's doable if we have high aspirations. High aspirations. Al-himmatul aliyah. Imam Shafi'i radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, you will never accomplish anything without himmah, without high aspirations, right? You have to say to yourself, I can achieve this. I can do it. And for me, I definitely want to thank all of you. This year, this Ramadan, the year preceding this Ramadan has been amazing for me. Subhanallah. And a lot of that joy and pleasure that I found was because of your company. May Allah reward you all. You've really been a dedicated group of individuals. Yes, sir, Mr. Whitehead. Peace to you, my brother. You've been an amazing group. I read something this morning after Fajr. One of the great scholars, let's see if how many you are scholar lovers. Do any of you know who Sheikh Muhammad ibn Allan al-Bakri is? His name is Sheikh Muhammad ibn Allan al-Bakri, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Does anyone know who that is? So we say every day you get to learn something. So today you can learn something if you don't know, right? We talked about last night in the Black Imams Round Table. Every day you need to learn, right? So you're going to learn something. Number one, in the dhikr salihin tanzilu rahmah. So the first thing you can remember when we mentioned the name of the pious people, the mercy of Allah descends. Sheikh Muhammad ibn Allan al-Bakri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, huwa min as-salihin. He was among the righteous. One of your favorite scholars. That's right, Muti. That always works. You sound like the car dealer. Whenever they ask you something, don't worry, I'll check with my manager. It's one of my favorite scholars. Come on, somebody. Ya tulab al-ilm. Oh, students of knowledge. Who is Sheikh Muhammad ibn Allan al-Bakri? It's a lot of y'all. Come on, I know some of y'all got to know. At least one person. There's too many people in here for nobody to know. That means we got a lot of work. No one knows? All right, I'll give you one more minute. Think about it. You should know. Yeah, Abdurrahman. Finally, I got to jump on your back. I usually give you a break. You don't have to be embarrassed. Don't worry. Your kids know. Say, I don't, but my kids do. Right? MashaAllah. They know. No one? Hey, go ahead, hit your shake. Shake Google. Okay. So Muhammad ibn Allan al-Bakri, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he was a great hafiz of hadith who lived in the 11th century in Mecca. He is very famous hadith scholar. And what he's really famous for hadith, but he's famous for his two commentaries and other stuff, but two commentaries on two books of Imam Nawawi. He wrote a book on commentator on Al-Adhkar of Imam Nawawi and on Riyadh al-Salihin. One of Futurat al-Rabbaniya ala al-Adhkar al-Nawawiyya, and the other, Dalal al-Falihin li Turuk Riyadh al-Salihin. Two famous commentaries on the books of Imam Nawawi. So whenever you want to study Al-Adhkar or Riyadh al-Salihin, the most famous commentary on those books are written by Sheikh Muhammad ibn Allan al-Bakri al-Shafi'i al-Ash'ari, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So he was known as the Suyuti of his time. So he was like Al-Hafiz Jalaluddin al-Suyuti in his time. He was in Mecca. So he died in the year 1057 AH after Hijrah. So I'm speaking about him, about you, right? So It is mentioned about him, though. Now, I'm saying he was one of the foremost scholars of hadith in Mecca, right? And he had students, many students from Indonesia, from Yemen, from Egypt, from Sham, from Maghrib, from Morocco. Like everyone who like came to Mecca, they would like sit there and they would sit in his sessions and learn from him. So he had a lot of students from outside, but his students in Mecca were very few, right? Very few. And they mention about him a famous poem and line of poetry and saying, they said that many scholars are like the Kaaba. A lot of people from far distance travel to it, but the people who are close to it are aloof from it. They don't go visit. He said those great scholars, they are like Al-Kaaba. They're like the Kaaba in Mecca. People from far away, many of them always come to it. But the people who are right around it never visit it. They have zuhud when it comes to the Kaaba. They have abstinence. You know, they're detached. They don't go, right? So you would have people, and I met some like that, they live right in Mecca and they don't go to the Kaaba. They live in Mecca, but they don't go to the Kaaba. But the people who are way far away, they come. So sometimes I look at the same case, it's funny. Most of the people who study with me are not from my area, right? Most of the people that come to the classes and learn, they're not from my area. So at home, few students, very few people come to pray, but not to learn. Most of the students are from elsewhere, right? Imam al-Haddad was the same way, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Habib al-Imam Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habashi and al-Imam Muhammad bin Zayn bin Sumayt, may Allah be pleased with both of them, they used to come to Imam al-Haddad to study with him. So, you know, Imam al-Haddad is Imam al-Haddad, al-Arif billah, al-Alim Jalil, al-Allama, al-Hujjah, you know, this great scholar. And so when they would visit, Al-Imam Muhammad bin Zayn bin Sumayt, he noticed that nobody was coming. So he said to Imam Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habashi, he said, hey, why is nobody here? And Imam Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habashi, he was a smart one, right? He said, shh, be quiet. Maybe this is Allah's gift to us. If you keep requesting, maybe be so many people, we won't benefit. Just be quiet. If it's just us, alhamdulillah, right? So they had many, many private sessions with Imam Haddad because he didn't have a lot of students that would come to him in Tareem. Most of the peoples were travelers, and they were travelers. They didn't live in Tareem. They came to Tareem to stay with Imam al-Haddad. And it worked. They benefited so much, right? They benefited so much. And Imam al-Haddad, he said, some of the teachers and scholars, they are a bab to Allah. They are a door. They are a bab to Allah. They are a door. He said, but many people don't recognize that bab until it becomes a qabr. Subhanallah, that's deep. He said, many people don't recognize the bab until it becomes a qabr. He said, they don't recognize that this person is a door for you to Allah, but they don't recognize it till they die and go in the grave. And when they become a qabr, then they say, oh, what a great scholar he was. What a great teacher he was. He's dead now. Subhanallah. And he said, I am that qabr. Imam Haddad said, I am that grave. I am a doer now, but many people don't recognize till I become a qabr. And then they will come to the qabr. And sure enough, many people now go to the grave of Sayyid al-Imam Haddad, radiyallahu ta'ala. So I said those two stories for you to remind you that it is a blessing that we have each other, right? And it is your diligence is an inspiration for myself. And I hope my deficient diligence is enough for you to inspire you. I think if we can inspire each other, because you're definitely an inspiration for me. And I know with all my deficiencies, hopefully I am, inshallah, some source of inspiration for you. Because we did a wondrous journey. We traveled a wondrous journey. And I'm happy, really. I am very happy with our work. But that's only the first step. A first step in a long, long journey, right? A long, long journey. And so everyone has those 25 books. I don't know where the list is at. The list was on a flyer. Did y'all saw that list, right? So that 25 book challenge, we're going to get at these books somehow, some way. We're going to read all of these this year. So let's everyone make an intention from now to the next Ramadan. We're going to read every one of these books fully, from cover to cover, line for line. Right? Line for line. So we already got our goal ahead of us, right? So the books we're going to read: Reliance of the Traveler, Al-Ghazali's 40 Principles, Minhaj al-Abidin, Ila Jannat Rabbil Alameen, Ahl Sunnah, the Asharis, Notions That Must Be Corrected, Muqtasar Ihya Ulumuddin, Sheikh Abdullah Sirajuddin's Testimony of Faith, The Prayers of Forgiveness, which is a dua book, so we can learn those dua, right? The Creed of Al-Bayhaqi, the critique of the Palmarian Creed, Imam Haddad's Knowledge and Wisdom, Sifinatul Najah, the Ark of Salvation, the 3 treaties of Imam al-Haddad, the Principles of the Creed, Imam al-Ghazali, the Risalatul Jamia, Ahmed bin Zayn al-Habashi, La ilaha illallah, Al-Maqasid for Imam al-Nawawi, the Duties of Brotherhood for Imam al-Ghazali, Allah Madhabiyya, Sheikh Muhammad Saeed Ramadan al-Bouti, the Quest for Virtuous Character, Al-Habib Muhammad Ibn Abdullah al-Haddar, Sacred Knowledge and Aims and Objectives of Habib Omar bin Hafid, the Spiritual Insights, which is the way of the Sa'ad Ba'alawi, the Book of Assistance of Imam al-Haddad, Sending Prayers Upon the Prophet, Sheikh Abdullah Sirajuddin, Bidayat al-Hidayah of Imam al-Ghazali. And we're going to do some of the books, inshallah, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. They're not going to be by subject. We'll just read them. We'll go. So probably what we'll do is during these morning reflections, we'll probably just pick some books, some parts of it, and just read. Maybe we'll read a little of this book, a little of that book, a little of that book, like that, and get through them. And you should be reading them on your own. And maybe, Sister Malika, how are you feeling? Are you up to it yet? I've been leaving you alone because I knew you wasn't feeling well. Sister Malika is an avid reader. And inshallah, She's feeling well. Make dua for her. And she can help with some reading, inshallah. She's always rolling. Make dua for her health. Inshallah ta'ala. Or we can get some others who are good readers, who are willing to read. And she said, yes, I'm ready, willing, and able. All right. So inshallah, maybe that's what we'll do. And we'll do that during this time, right? During the scattered thoughts, because that reading can be scattered thoughts as well, as we reflect on what the authors are saying. Inshallah ta'ala. Yeah, Fatima, she says, Subhanallah, I gain more when I'm being read to. Blessings to you and our sister who reads well for us. Don't worry, I gain more when I'm reading, when I'm being read to too, because if I try to read myself, I'm going to sleep. Man, if I read by myself, if I make it 10 pages, I'm lucky. 2 pages sometimes, I'm out. If I read myself. But if someone else is reading, I can go through books. I think it was last week or the other day, I read 100 pages. Man, I was so proud of myself. I used to do that when I was young, but I read 100 pages the other day, straight. I was like, mashallah, right? And for me, that's a lot. I'm telling you, if I make it 10, I'm lucky. Book has hit me in the face. I'm like the little kid. Could you tell me a bedtime story? Just put a book in front of me for 10 minutes, I'm gone. Subhanallah. But with readers, we can get a lot done, right? I would but no, reading is very important. Reading is very important. Because, reading is the first command in the Quran. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the name of your Lord who created you. Subhanallah. Right? And reading is a joy, right? The more you read, the more you read, the more you read, the more you'll learn, inshallah. So inshallah ta'ala, we'll do that. And my advice to you in closing, before we go to post-fajr reflections, is those 3 things that I mentioned over the last couple of days, right? Al-ibadah, and make this part of our culture among us. Al-ibadah, all acts of worship, right? All acts of worship. Be diligent in our acts of worship. Al-imara, help do our part to develop our earth. And we say al-imara, develop our communities, build our communities, right? Very important. And the third thing, at-tazkiyah, let's purify ourselves inwardly from all blameworthy characteristics and adorn ourselves with praiseworthy characteristics. It's something that we just should not let go. And let's keep it up. Let's increase from what we did. So yes, last year we had these classes every day. We had Sheikh Walid at night, and Sheikh Abdul Rahman, and Sheikh Abdul Aziz. We had the Black Imams Roundtable. We added the Youth Roundtable. Let's see with our schedule where we can add some more, right? I have something I'm going to try. I'm not promising it's going to be every day because it's very difficult because of my time. But I'm going to start some days. They will not be announced, right? because I don't want to fix myself to it, because I may not be able to do it every day. But I'm going to have between Asr and Maghrib some reading in some books, right? So I'm going to try to start reading in some books. There are some books that I think would be very beneficial to us, that I benefited from, that I want to share with you. And I think especially in the issues of the creed, I think they're very important books. But they could, the author can be quite controversial to some, not to me, but to some. So I really avoided reading his books, but his books are highly beneficial for a person who's a real Sunni. So I think I'm going to take a shot at it, because it's like I really, really think we need to be strong in the creed, but not extreme. And those books can make you strong and extreme. So I'm going to try to teach those books while at the same time prevent you from becoming extreme. You think we could do it? We can be strong but not extreme while learning from books that will make you strong and extreme. What do you think? Think we could do it? Are we mature enough for someone to give us a AK-47 and we don't go shoot up the store? You think we're mature enough? Inshallah, why not? Now, yeah, I have some beautiful things that I think would be helpful to us, right? And I learned them multiple times. Not, you're talking about reading a book 3 times. I've read these books probably 70, 80 times. I've taught them, I've studied them back and forth, right? So I know them pretty well. And I think they will be beneficial in and I just need you, because some of you are some people, I'm not saying you, let me change the word. Some people are very biased. They're not fair. They don't have insaf. They're not balanced and have fairness in their judgments. The person who is fair can learn from anyone and take the beneficial and leave the harmful, or leave that which is better to leave and accept that which is beneficial. So we should be able, if we can't reach a point where we can read the books of Albany, for instance, and identify what is beneficial and what is harmful, and take the beneficial and leave the harmful, we haven't learned fairness yet. Or you could take the books of any scholar and you can read it and you can benefit from what is beneficial. You can recognize what is harmful and avoid it. And you can recognize what is not so not necessarily harmful, but better to leave it. You should be able to distinguish. That is when you've learned. Sheikh Samir taught me that. If you only can listen to your teacher only, and anyone who is not a mirror of your teacher, you can't follow them, you are mistaken. You haven't learned. It is when you can go in the world and you have the scale of the sacred law and you can weigh things. That's when you've learned. So did I tell you the story of one of my teachers in Hadith, what he did to me? Did I tell you that story before? One of my teachers, he did two things to me. I wanted to learn. He was a student of one of the great Hufaz, Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So I was learning with him in Hadith. And my really only thing was I wanted to learn from the route of Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari. So that was really my biggest concern. And in those days, it was hard to find his books. Now I have all of his books. But in those days, it was almost impossible to find books. This is like 20 years ago, right? So when I came to him to study, man, I wish I would have listened. Today, I wish I would have listened. I listened to some, but not all, right? He gave me two things before he would teach me. He said, you need to learn computer programming. This was 20 years ago. So remember, that wasn't so big thing, right? He said, you got to learn computer programming, and I'm going to teach you. And you have to read the books of Albany before I teach you. I was like, what? And I remember when he told me that, I looked at him like he was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I never forget it. I was like, man, he's crazy. What kind of stuff is this? But I wanted to learn. So I took both. So I remember me and another brother who was at that time, he's like my mother and his mother, like best friends. We're like brothers, right? He was doing the computer stuff. He was learning because he knew some stuff. I had no idea about computers at all in those days. But he was like, yeah, this is some good stuff. So I would get the books and give them to him, and we would talk about them. And I don't know, he did become something with, I don't know what he did with all of that stuff, but he did learn some things. So we was doing that. And I took the Albany project, right? So even though I didn't want to do it, but I wanted to learn from him. And I wanted to get some of the books of Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari and read some of those books on him. And I wanted that real bad. So I did the Albany thing, which to this day, I'm happy I did that. To me, that was some smooth advice, because I learned a lot of things that I would have never learned if I would have just learned with him, just reading one. It taught me balance in Hadith. It taught me to understand how to research Hadith. It taught me a lot of stuff, right? And I was very happy that he taught me that lesson. Because what he was doing was, if you're going to understand the works, he was telling me later, of Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari, rahimahullah ta'ala, you need to understand why he said what he said, why he did the type of research he did. And if you read the books of Albany, and then once you read the books, he said, you're going to be able to bring it all together. And then you'll be able to really appreciate the level of Al-Hafiz Abdullah al-Ghumari. And it's not the way everyone does it, but it was wise. And it taught me to know the difference between a Hafiz and a researcher. Al-Bahith, excuse me, and a Hafiz. There is a difference. There is a difference between the two. Al-Albani was a researcher, not a scholar of a master of hadith. Big difference. But you're only going to know that difference when you understand what one does and what another one does, right? No, Albany was nowhere near half. He was Bahith. He was a researcher. He was a good researcher, but he was a researcher. There's a big difference from a researcher and a Hafiz. Night and day. But why did I mention that? Oh, I was talking about a book I want to read. So inshallah, I'm going to read a book with you, probably sometime this year, of one of big scholars that I think we would benefit from greatly, inshallah. Because I benefited. And I don't like to hide information because everyone can't handle it. There are some who can handle it. And if you teach it properly, it could be beneficial. We need to have a vast. You know, one of the things we do, we read all over the world. Scholars from all over the world. We read their works, right? This is the way you have a vast opening in your religious studies. It needs to be organized, but vast. طيب, may Allah reward you, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. It's going to be a good year coming up, inshallah. Make dua that Allah give us tawfiq to accomplish all of our objectives, inshallah. يا ربنا بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Inshallah, I'll see you in the post-Fajr reflections.